everyone. I'm Barbara Hamlee. Norfolk is a safer city. Reported crime is at its lowest level in over 34 years, and violent crime using a firearm continues its 3-year double-digit decline. That's the good news, but the work is not over. Gun violence still plagues our most vulnerable neighborhoods, and our guest today is determined to do something about it. His name is Chief Larry Boone. He's in charge of the Norfolk Police Department, and he's here to share why he believes gun violence is not only a crime issue, but a public health issue. Stay tuned for a very candid conversation with Chief Larry Boone. Another View is next.
Discussing today's topics from an African-American perspective, this is Another View.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Another View. I'm Barbara Hamlee. Before we get into our conversation with Chief Larry Boone, who is here, I want to remind you about our show next week because we're going to be broadcasting live from Fort Monroe. That's on Friday, August the 23rd. Now, this broadcast will help kick off 3 days of music, tours, and special events to commemorate the arrival of the first enslaved Africans in English North America. Join me, special guest, historian Dr. Cassandra Newby-Alexander, and National Park Service Superintendent Terry Brown. We're going to be talking about the history, the series of events that they have planned, and you really want to be a part of this. We need you to be a part of our live studio audience. So if you want to come out, you want to watch us do radio live, it is free and open to everyone. We're asking you to arrive by 11:30 a.m. at Fort Monroe, and to reserve your seat, please go to whro.org/events to register for this broadcast. whro.org/events. You can register and come join us. We'll have a great time. So between 2016 and 2018, 99 people were killed by a firearm in Norfolk. 90% were male, 57% under the age of 30, and 87% were African American. Now, despite the fact that overall crime is down in Norfolk and violent crime is on a 3-year double-digit decline, gun violence continues to plague our most fragile neighborhoods. Our guest today says gun violence is a crime issue. It's also a public health issue. Please welcome Norfolk's top cop, Chief of Police Larry Boone. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you for having me.
Oh, I am so glad that you're here. So, you put out this report about firearms, and you're doing a lot of innovative, different things. So let's talk about the latest study that you've done on the fact that the firearms are out there, and that you're trying to figure out where are the criminals getting these firearms from.
Okay.
Right.
So let me give you some contextual background on this. So when I became chief in December of 2016, a newspaper article came out very shortly thereafter, and there was a photograph of 3 young African Americans, and they each were holding a firearm, and they had these big smiles on their face, and they were rather young. And one of the things that bothered me was that I knew 2 of the 3 that was in that photograph subsequently was killed. So as police chief, it dawned on me, why aren't we examining how these kids or these young men are getting these guns? So one of the things I commissioned was a gun study group, in that going forward, any gun we come across, we are going to analyze the gun, because historically, if there was a homicide, robbery, or whatever the case may have been regarding crime, and a gun was used, once we solved the crime, the gun was just freight to the crime, and we just didn't examine that. Now, that didn't make any sense to me. So almost 3 years later, we've been examining the weapon, and one of the things that is very clear is that most of the guns in Hampton Roads, particularly here in Norfolk, are bought legally by black males and white males, somewhat equally.
Equally, yeah.
But in very short order, those guns end up in the hands of felons, our youth, and just to put it bluntly, people that did not originally purchase the weapon in African Americans.
So are they stealing them? Are they selling, are legal people buying them and selling them to the bad guys? I mean, where's the transfer happening?
So the transition from legal purchase to the hands
Criminal use.
is a multitude of things. One thing, folks are leaving guns in their cars, okay, unsecured. And the cars,
Really?
Yes, that happens quite frequently. Folks are leaving guns unsecured in their homes, and there are also some straw purchasings going on. So for those that may not understand this term, straw purchasing, I'm assuming you've never been arrested for a felony.
No, I haven't.
And because you have not, you could go into any gun shop, okay, and buy as many guns as you want every day. And if you decided, I don't like these guns anymore, I'm going to give them to Johnny over here or sell it to Johnny over here, you could do that. Or if you wanted to leave them in your vehicle unsecured, you can do that. Because in Virginia, one can purchase as many guns as they want, okay, as long as they qualify. Two, if your gun is lost or stolen, all right, there's no requirement for you to report it.
So I don't have to tell you that my gun has been stolen.
That's correct. That's correct. So that creates a challenge for us because, how do we know your gun actually was stolen? How do we know you're not selling these guns? I'm very, very cautious when I look at the data at how these guns were purchased legally and where they subsequently end up in some of our most challenging areas. And that concerns me. So that's what we've been doing here in the Norfolk Police Department. I don't know what other departments do, but I was at a conference this weekend at New Orleans, Louisiana. The National Organization of Black Law Enforcement Executives, NOBLE, and I was part of a panelist that talked about reducing violent crime as well as increasing the trust between community and police. So one of the things they asked me to speak about was just that, and we talked about this gun study that we put together. And one of the things I challenged NOBLE with doing is if we could mandate that every police chief do what Norfolk has done, that would really create a picture of how this issue really is a public health issue.
Expound on that. Why do you think that it's more of a public health issue? Or is it equally a public health issue as well as a crime issue?
Well, it's a combination of both, but I think historically, if you go back, Barbara, 10, 20, 30 years, and if I was to put the data points, okay, in a bar chart that showed the race and gender of those that had succumbed to gun homicide, it would be profound. I already know that number at what it looks like in Norfolk. I know what it would look like if in Hampton Roads, if others did the same. There would be no question this is a public health issue.
Well, and from the data that I saw, that I've read from your reports and so forth, the majority, and even in my intro, the majority of the crimes are happening in those vulnerable communities, in poor communities, in communities of color, in Black communities, where the person who's killed is Black and the person who's doing the shooting,
that's correct,
is Black. And so we're losing our young folks, and the majority, it was between that 20 and 30 year age range.
So when you look at homicides or just shooting itself, the victims tend to be Black males between the ages of 15 to 34, which the CDC say themselves are the most critical age group affected by gun violence. That group, 15 to 34, tends to be the group most affected. So, I recently met with Congresswoman Elaine Laura. She came to my office and we spoke about some of the issues surrounding gun violence and where it's happening. This was on the heels of the incident in Virginia Beach. I have a meeting next week with Senator Kane regarding some of the same issues. So this information has been helpful, getting it out there so folks can have an opportunity to look at what's going on. I believe with everything in me, if this was done throughout the state and we got a clear picture of how guns travel to and from and who the gun violence is affecting the most, this would clearly be a public health issue.
So the crime is down in Norfolk.
Yes.
Which is great. And you have a four-pronged approach that you use in terms of crime fighting. I wonder if you would break that down for us a little bit. You know, you talk about focused deterrence, hotspot policing, problem-oriented policing, and community engagement.
Sure.
And I really want to get into that community engagement piece too, because I know that that's huge. But let's take each one and just explain what it means so that people understand what the police department does in order to keep them safe. So focused deterrence.
All right, so let me put this in perspective. So 2017, after a full year being chief, crime reduced double digits, and I don't know the numbers off the top of my head, by 15, 16, 17%, something like that. And we were able to accomplish some of the same things in 2018. Now, going into 2019, we are starting to see some challenges with respect to shootings. Okay, our shootings are up, although our homicides are lower than it's ever been at this point in the last 4 or 5 years.
And the difference, so that people make sure they're clear.
Sure.
The difference between the shooting and the homicide person actually dies.
That's correct.
The shooting could be shot anywhere.
It doesn't necessarily have to be a person getting shot. It could be a car. It could be a house. Someone pulled a trigger. All right. And I'll say this all the time. You know, shootings are an indication of how safe your city is, whether, you know, someone is actually shot or not. So let's go back to your original question, focused deterrence. All right, that's just another name for saying focusing on the right people in the right communities based on data. So in the early 90s, at the height of crack cocaine, we would go into communities where we knew crack cocaine was being sold because it was clearly visible, all right? And we would stop sometimes folks that didn't need to be stopped. Now, what has that done for us? Okay. That had really done anything in terms of building relationships, because what you've just done is alienated that person that shouldn't have been stopped. So focused deterrence is simply this: focusing on the right individuals that are in these communities. These communities are hot because there are hot people in those communities. So one of the things we do in CompStat, and CompStat is just a tool in how police department manage their crime. It's just an information source in how we are able to synchronize our efforts on who's actually doing the crime. So there's a community of, let's just say, I don't like to say community, so let's just say community A. Okay. All right. In community A, the data shows us that there are a increase in shootings. And we happen to know that suspect number 1 and suspect number 2 are largely responsible for a lot of those shootings. All right, that information is synchronized regarding suspect 1 and 2, and as a force, all right, patrol, gang squad, homicide, robbery, detective division, we focus on those individuals, okay, as opposed to just randomly stopping folks.
So you figure out who's doing the crime,
yes,
and focus on those folks,
yes,
and get them to stop.
Absolutely. No, well, we just don't get them stopped. We either take them off the streets. All right, that's our reason for addressing them. There's some issues in terms of practices of intervention. Okay, let me give you an example. We monitor social media, okay, for gang activity. And we happen to know if there's a shooting in Norfolk, particularly in certain neighborhoods, that there's going to be retaliation. Okay, because these young kids, they don't mind telling you there's going to be retaliation. So what we do is we go to their house, knock on that door, and say, we've seen you on social media. We've seen your comments. If something happened to this individual, we're coming for you first.
So you let them know up front.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
How do they react? What do they say?
Well, most times they say, man, I'm just mouthing off. I ain't going to do nothing, that kind of thing. But, we have to get in front of this, because what data shows is once there's a shooting, you have a window of 48 hours to intervene, okay? Because if you don't, there will be a retaliation. All right.
Gotcha.
One of the things I stood hard and fast on was, I was going to call it like it is. And one of the things I noticed as a lieutenant, when I was in charge of the gang squad, we have this process called CompStat, and I spoke earlier to that. Mm-hmm. And in CompStat, I recognized that most of the folks that we spoke about in CompStat were gang members. Mm-hmm. And I brought this to the attention of leadership. They thought it was too risky, because they thought, quite frankly, it was racial profiling. Exactly. So, now I'm the police chief, and one of the things I calibrated my leadership with was, the folks that drive crime in the city of Norfolk are gang members. That's the reality of it. 85% of our crime is driven by gang members. And they start young. They start young by car larcenies, okay? And as they get older, they start, robbing people, and then subsequently they get possession of handguns. So focused deterrence, long and short, is just focusing on the right people based on the data, okay? And we are in certain communities based on the data. It does us no good, okay, to try to equally, send a portion here, send a portion here.
When you know that the crime is focused in one place.
Exactly.
One place.
Exactly.
Hotspot policing.
Hotspot policing is simply, as I said earlier, a particular area of the city that's hot, and the reason that area is hot is because they had those people in those communities. That area wouldn't be hot if those individuals weren't there, okay? And again, hotspot policing and hotspot bodies, they go hand in glove. Okay. Focused deterrence, hotspot policing, they go hand in glove. Problem-oriented policing. That's just another way of saying police and community working together, but I've taken it a step forward in terms of I actually allow community members to come to our CompStat. And as you know, CompStat is really, really a big deal to let folks see how you're actually making the sausage.
Absolutely.
Okay? And the reason I want them to see that is because I want them to have an understanding what the officers are against, but also I want them to have an understanding what's going on in their communities. They get to see it up front and personal, and I don't hide anything. So what that does, they will have a better appreciation and understanding when they see the officers in their communities enforcing the law.
That is so interesting.
Yeah.
And I think about that because when I used to work for Prince George's County Police in Maryland, and CompStat was really, that form of policing was really just coming on board. And I can't imagine that they would let the community in. Now, that may be different today.
Right.
Because this was back in the early 2000s.
A lot of departments, they have some concerns about that because of intel. Now, when we start getting to some of our more sensitive topics, I excuse them from the meeting, but for the most part, they're there a good hour or so, and they get to see
what's going on.
What's going on.
And then community engagement. Norfolk is doing more in terms of community engagement in terms of your police department than anyone else.
Sure. Well, community engagement is important, okay? And I tell our folks all the time, it's a difference between community engagement and authentic community engagement, okay? Because a lot of police departments, and I'm not pointing any fingers, Most of us do a good job, but there are some that just have these photo ops, okay? Just show up to an event, take the photo, and they're gone. There's no capturing the hearts or the minds. And what I tell my folks all the time, we have to demonstrate that we care. And we have a multitude of programs in place that actually does that. You know, one of the things we started some years ago, and this was based on my experience as a little boy. You know, I had a problem reading and reading comprehension and understanding math. And in New Brunswick, New Jersey, there was a program, although it wasn't with police officers, it was with college students, which they would mentor a youth once a week for an hour. So here in the Norfolk Police Department, we've done some of the same things with the LEC, Life Enrichment Center, with Wanda and Kevin Turpin.
Turpin, yes.
Yeah. So what we do is I have about 55 to 60 officers once a week that have a little mentee that they teach how to read, okay, throughout the whole school year, all right? This is our 5th year in doing that. And one of the things that I also done was all our community engagement is tied to your responsibility and leadership. If you want to be a leader on this department, okay, you have to take part in this. I don't want you doing it begrudgingly, okay? 'Cause that nobody wants that, and folks realize when
And they
when
can
you're
feel it. Exactly.
I want you to do it because 1, you want to. 2, you see how important it is. You know, it's funny. I have a lot of folks that do really well on the police exam. But one question, they all know they're getting this question. The police department has implemented many community outreach functions.
Which ones have you done?
Which one have you done? If not, why not? Okay, and I feel bad for some of these folks that done really well, but hadn't taken part in this.
What are some of the answers to the if not, why not?
Busy for the most part. Sometimes you get a straight up answer of, Chief, I have no excuse. I just dropped the ball on that. And but you know, the funny thing now, I got folks coming into their interview and they have a list of things that they because really, I really want to move the needle when it comes to community engagement. I think that those functions, when we're very transparent in who we are as an agency and as people, all right, we really care about the folks in Norfolk, you know, particularly our youth. We have a host of things that we do to show that. We have actionable partnerships. You know what I mean by actionable partnerships? You're not just going to say you're a partner with the Norfolk Police Department and sit back on the sideline. You have to do something. Give an example, you know. When I was an assistant chief, as well as a deputy chief, I was in a position where I saw clergy would meet with Chief Marquis. I'm sorry, not Chief Marquis, but Chief Goldsmith. And those meetings, they were always asked the chief, what can we do for you? And he would very politely say, just support me where I need support. So when I became chief, I was waiting on that question, okay? So I'm glad you asked, okay? This is what I would like for you to do for me. There's a lot of crime that happened right outside your doors, okay? In a particular sector here in the city of Norfolk, and what I mean by sector, an area of the city, there's 64 churches, okay? It's my most violent sector in the city. I wanted to create what we call clergy patrol, where the clergy ride with an officers on Friday and Saturday night for a span of 4 hours from 8 to 12 midnight, so that they can see firsthand what's happening outside their doors. I got to say they have responded in such a fashion that it makes me proud. I'm talking about the clergy folks because they're really engaged in this, and you know, I don't have any problems getting volunteers. And if anybody's listening to this, I'm looking for more volunteers.
And they actually are able to talk with the families that are experiencing an issue and so forth, too.
Exactly. It's a prime opportunity for them to administer counseling, advice to a victim that's gone through something in, you know, real time. So it's a win-win for the police department as well as our clergy members.
440-2665 or 1-800-940-2240 are the numbers to call to join our conversation. What questions do you have for Norfolk Police Chief Larry Boone? 440-2665 or 1-800-940-2240. And if you're just joining us, we are talking about crime prevention in general, but specifically for the city of Norfolk too, with Chief Larry Boone, who is Chief of Police for the Norfolk Police Department. So, Chief, I got to ask you this question because by your own admission, you grew up in a tough neighborhood in New Jersey. As an African-American man, outside of your police department, take off your police hat for a moment. As an African-American man, when you see things like the shooting that happened in Chicago or what happened with Freddie Gray, with all these different kind of police and black men interactions, how do you line up with your police chiefness and your being a black man in America? Do you know what I mean?
Yes, I do have an idea what you're saying. Now, one, it's hard, Barbara, for me to take out my perspective of being a police chief.
Okay.
That's very hard to do. Because
but somewhere inside, do you get a feel of a little, the hairs rise on the back of your neck or anything?
I'm going to address that. Now,
Okay.
there are moments, there have been incidents where I say, that's damn wrong. Okay. All right, that's just wrong. And, the Eric Garner situation, there's no need for piling upon that man. There were other ways to do that. They could have used de-escalation skills. There was a multitude of things they could have done. The shooting in South Carolina.
Yes.
Okay, that's
where the gentleman
criminal.
was going away.
That's just criminal. Walter Scott. There's some things that are so black and white. Regardless of who you are, you need to say it. Because when I don't say it, the experience of being an African American man, folks will know that I'm faking if I don't say the obvious. Okay. So there are things that I have a concern about. And we still have a ways to go in policing. I tell my recruits, there's some things that have happened to certain folks in certain communities that make them awfully suspicious of us. Okay, when we talk about the slave patrol, we talk about Jim Crow, we talk about mass incarceration, we talk about all those things. I'm going to be very transparent, regardless of who you are, as to why some folks may not trust us. Okay, and it's on us to win that trust, which is why we try so hard through our community outreach efforts to try to gain that trust. Okay, we go a little bit over in the board, but I say all that to say, at the same time, our core function is crime suppression. All right, I don't want anybody to give any idea to think that the Norfolk Police Department is soft on crime. We are not. Okay, it takes a healthy balance of crime suppression and a healthy balance of community outreach to make this thing work. And I think we've demonstrated that in the last 2.5 years.
What do you think it's going to take to help our black boys in particular, our black men in particular, to come out of this crime mode and become more have the ability to be able to have a job, to raise a family, to do, the things that the rest of us are doing, and not do the crime.
I got opportunity. I don't care whether it's Norfolk, Chicago, Detroit. It looks the same. I mentioned earlier, I went to a police chief's conference, and I can listen to the news and close my eyes. And I know what the backdrop looks like, okay? All these areas have the same challenges, okay? They're dealing with systems of racism, systems of poverty, systems of undereducation, system of housing issues, system of mental health issues. And on top of that, we throw guns in those neighborhoods. Our young men are in need of hope. Even some of the toughest gang members, okay? You get them in that room and you say, I wish I could have been your father. You watch what happens to them. They become representative of their age. Okay, teary-eyed, crying, okay, like a little boy. Okay, and
So they're not as tough as they try to come across.
A lot of these young men, they want adult leadership, which is why, I have two young men that I mentor personally, and I have my own family, okay? But it's important to me that, I try to do my part. And I don't think collectively, strategically, as African Americans, we do enough. That's just the reality of it. Everybody's doing their own thing in their own little corners, and nobody knows what anyone is doing. I don't think we do enough to address some of the issues that affect our young black men. I'm telling you from experience, having been arrested twice as a juvenile, if I didn't have that intervention, I would be, where some of my family members are, either in jail or dead. And I know folks say that a lot, but that's just the reality of it. All it took was intervention. Someone going to my mother and saying, he has talent. Send him somewhere other than where he is. And she sent me to Northampton County, North Carolina, to live with my grandparents. And my life changed instantly. We don't have enough adult leadership. We all have thoughts and prayers, mashing of teeth, but there's no action.
Someone said once,
You're about to get me fired up,
no, I know.
Okay.
But someone said once on this show, Bill Thomas, because we talked about it for a long time, where he said by the time they're 16, they're done. It's too late.
I don't believe that. I don't believe that. How do you know that? How do we know that? We're going based on data. How do we know what type of intervention was applied to that young man or woman? Okay, we don't. We don't have any systems in place to measure that. I think that the challenges are so huge that we give up. We've become so numb,
That's true.
death.
I mean, look at all the shootings, and then you turn around the next day, and it's like the people have moved on.
We've become so numb. Well, we're not numb to mass shootings. Okay, there's a whole lot of national synergies surrounding those. But we have mass shootings, if you go by the definition of it, weekly right here in Hampton Roads. Where's that outrage?
It's a good question. 440-2665 or 1-800-940-2240. What questions do you have for Chief Boone about crime, about intervention, about trying to make things better? 440-2665 or 1-800-940-2240. So my question to you is this. If you had a magic wand, let me change that. I have another question. I just thought about that.
Okay.
So crime is down in Norfolk, but yet Norfolk still gets this rap that it's a dangerous place. Is that just because it's an urban area and is urban, how we put urban in air quotes, or are people being unrealistic in terms of their perceived fear of living in this city? Well, I don't have it personally, but I do know, and I listen to people talking, and there's certain sections of town they won't go, or they won't go out at night, or things of that nature.
I think that's just when it comes to an urban setting, whether it's Norfolk, Detroit, or anywhere else, there is a feeling of those areas aren't safe because of what you see reported nightly on TV, things of that nature. There's some areas of Norfolk that are extremely safe, okay? In fact, if I was not mandated, I wouldn't even have a police car in some of those areas because they're extremely safe. Now, we do have a very, very small pocket of places that are challenging, and those are the places that we're talking about today with respect to gun violence. But a lot of that perception is based on it being an urban setting, and let me just scratch the underbelly of urban.
Go ahead.
African American setting.
Yes. Okay. Yeah, exactly. 440-2665 or 1-800-940-2240. Blaine joins us from Virginia Beach. Hi, Blaine. You're on the air.
Hello. First of all, I want to say I'm a first-time listener and very grateful that I came across the show.
Thank you. Blaine, you're breaking up. Are you in one area, or can you stand still with yourself?
I am. My goodness. Is this any better?
Yes, much better.
Okay. So, Chief, close to home, this conversation is so timely, both locally and nationally. And I hear you talking about national. Closer to home, you mentioned the ministry ride-alongs, and I've noticed in Virginia Beach that when there's police presence at active bars, that there are identified clergy that are with the police. And I was wondering your perspective on the visibility approach that they're taking over here in Virginia Beach. And the second question, or actually perspective I'm looking for, is on the close to home Virginia Municipal Center shooting and your focus on preventing gun violence and, how things can be improved there.
Okay, Blaine, that's a big question. You want to respond about the shooting?
Well, let's take it. The first question, you said something about a bar.
The clergy.
The clergy present with police as they're policing the blocks where there are many, many bars and get very active on Friday and Saturday night.
Oh,
okay.
I see.
Okay.
Well, I think if Virginia Beach actually has a clergy patrol program and they are patrolling the strip area where there are numerous bars, I think that's a plus because, with young folks and alcohol, you're bound to have something happen, particularly where it's condensed. So if I wasn't aware that Virginia Beach actually had a clergy patrol program, but that's a plus, and I commend them for doing just that. As law enforcement, we always want to give folks an opportunity to do their part. A lot of times they just don't know how, and it's up to us to, find ways so that they can make a contribution.
Okay, thanks for the call, Blaine. We appreciate that. 440-2665 or 1-800-940-2240. Brian joins us from Virginia Beach. Hi, Brian. You're on the air.
Good day, and how are you guys doing today?
We're doing fine. What's your question?
Great. Well, I would want to echo what the chief was saying about being able to turn youth around once they've passed 16. We have property out in Lexington, Virginia, and I think if you pull kids off the street, it might be hard to do it, in the neighborhoods, but if you get them in an intervention, there's a program where they take these kids up into the woods and they go on campouts and they are kind of responsible. They become more responsible as they go along, and they go to several different places and visit schools to where they can see people that are being successful. And I think when you pull some of the inner city out of them and show them that they can be successful, I'm not sure that age is a limiting factor.
Okay, thanks so much for the call, Brian.
Let me just respond to that.
Sure.
And I love saying this quote, the me I see is the me I'll be. And that's exactly what he's saying. Mm-hmm. Okay, you are a product of what you see. We have this ACEs, it's adverse childhood exposure. And simply what that means, as a youth, if you're in an environment where, you see your mother being beaten, you see gunshots, you see folks stabbing, shooting, you start to think that's normal, okay?
Because that's all you know.
That's all the me I see is the me I'll be. And that's unfortunate. I say it again, I'll say it. We have to be more involved on the onset with our youth, and we just aren't. We just aren't. And I'm not just saying just Norfolk. I'm just saying,
in general.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I want you, though, since you're doing so much community engagement and you're in these communities, because I think sometimes people who have never experienced poverty have a perception of the people who live in these communities. Not everybody who is in these hotspots are doing crime.
That's correct.
So would you please give a sense of who are the neighbors that you interact with? Who are the people? What are they trying to do so that we can get people to understand that they're trying to live life just like the rest, like everyone else?
This may sound very cliches, but 99% of the folks that live in some of our most challenging neighborhoods are folks just like your grandma May, okay, or your Uncle Joe, all right? Hey, or your niece, Sally, And the reason I know this is because we interface with these folks weekly. And it's not just a hit and miss interface. As I said earlier, we have a reading program where these young folks are brilliant. And it pains me. You say, what happens? Okay, what happens? My officers, I love them. The women and men in this department, they go in these schools, these Title I schools, and as soon as they walk into that building, kids are running up to them, grabbing them by the knees because they're not that tall, but they said, pick me today, and we can't. There's just not enough of us because we have to stay committed to that one child. But those folks that live in these communities, just like the rest of us, okay, they are just in unfortunate circumstances in which, they're trying to do the very best that they can.
Let's go to Mark in Norfolk. Hi, Mark. You're on the air.
Yes. Good afternoon to everyone. I'm enjoying the conversation, and the chief is 100% on point. I'd just like to say, I have sat on a panel in Virginia Beach with the police chief, and one of the things that we talk about where I see the void, especially when the chief is talking about intervention, one of the big things I see is the disconnection from the law enforcement module where it then meets the courts, right? So the courts have a separate mission, then the chief has a separate mission. And I think if there was a better way for those two entities to get on the same page about what are the long-term goals of being able not only to fight crime, but to really look at what does true rehabilitation look like, and be able to model it and have those two agencies and those two sectors work together.
Mark is spot on. As I said earlier, there's folks, they're trying to do the right things, but we're working these silos, which is why I am trying to commission, the courts, as well as public health, as well as the school system, as well as NRHA, for us to come together as a multiplied force in terms of addressing some of these issues. The days of the police department trying to do this by themselves, and I don't say that to minimize any other organization, but I think we could be money ahead if we put our thoughts together and really
work more for real collaboration,
and a more surgical approach in addressing some of the needs of the community. But Mark was spot on. We're too, we're not, where we need to be in terms of unity.
Thanks so much for the call, Mark. I appreciate it. The phone lines are lit up. So let's go to Amy in Temperanceville. Hi, Amy. You're on the air.
Yeah. Hi. Thank you for taking my call. I've had an idea over 10 years or so, and it was more for like gangs, but it could be any youth groups that need intervention. Having sort of like a contest or, I don't know, some kind of thing where the groups pick up all the trash and create sculptures out of them in like the parks or wherever, and they can, have like a committee of judges that go around.
Okay, Amy, I get your point, and we have just a little bit of time left, so I want to be able to let the chief respond to the types of interventions that we can all get involved in, and things that we should try as citizens. So, thanks, Amy.
One of the things that we're doing, we're in the embryo stages of this, is we're trying to create a cure violence program. Let me tell you what that looks like. Okay. Cure Violence is a program in which the police department utilize individuals that have been reformed. Okay. Individuals that are coming home from prison that has shown themselves to wanting to do the right thing. And we're in the embryo stages of this, but cities that have implemented this have seen crime reduction, particularly with respect to shootings, go down tremendously. I've already identified a couple individuals that came from very, very rough neighborhoods, and they have the street credibility to go along with it. And
that's important, though.
Sure,
because they're not an outsider coming in saying this is what you need to do. Right. This is somebody who's actually lived their life.
This individual was a former kingpin. All right, that President Barack Obama gave him a pardon about 2 or 3 years ago, and he's been trying desperately to do his part because he feels as though that he's responsible for a lot of things that's going on today with the youth. I met him at one of our Guns Down event, and he said, Chief, I want to do my part. I've, lived a life that, I want to give back because I'm responsible for a lot of things that are going on right now. And I get that all the time, Barbara. And I said, well, what's your name? And when he told me his name, I knew exactly who he was because he's infamous, okay? Wow. And I said, let me think about this. Let me watch you for a while and see how serious you are just about this. So we have a group flying in from Chicago that is going to set this program up for us. And I'm looking for this program to pay huge dividends.
Yeah. So we've got about 2 minutes left.
Wow,
isn't that quick? Before we have to go on to our next story. But last thoughts. What do you want people to know about this city, about Norfolk, about crime, about what they need to do in order to continue to help these numbers go down?
I want folks, one, to know that this city is safer than it's ever been, number one. Two, I want folks to genuinely find a way to do their part, okay? And doing your part is not just in the moment. Doing your part is forever, okay? And if you don't know how to do that, contact me. I'll find a way for you to do just that because we are in need for adult leadership, and adult leadership means sustainable leadership that when I say we, everyone in this city can benefit from. We have young men, okay, that are dying, that are wayward in their thought process, that lack critical thinking skills, and because of that, they resort to violence. We, as a community, the community of Norfolk, okay, we have a duty to do just that. We have the duty to intervene just like we would with opioids and anything else.
Exactly. Thank you, Chief Boone.
How about that?
That is fantastic. And we will be right back.
I'm with Marcellus, and you all are checking out Another View. Don't go anywhere. Check us out.
And welcome back. Anthony Liggins started out designing upscale women's blouses in the early 90s and in less than a decade has successfully transitioned into a sought-after painter. Our Lisa Godley recently caught up with the Virginia native who was happy to share his thoughts about his art, his new book, and the journey that has taken him from Smithfield, Virginia to galleries and museums all over the world.
Brilliant, vibrant, dazzling. Just 3 words that can easily describe the visual journey you'll take as you gaze upon Anthony Liggins' abstract artwork.
I call them my babies, and I name all of them.
So I asked Anthony to describe one of his favorites.
Well, there's a piece called Raw Beauty. Raw Beauty is an abstract movement of a woman in her raw state, and it's a black and white abstract, and then it has the brass symbols as her eyes and her nose. This is a total mixed media piece. Then at the bottom, there's this ceramic vessel, which to me is all about the mind, body, and spirit being in hell, and then what she gives out to the world is being revealed when you look at this painting.
Using both paper and canvas, this multimedia artist's work explodes with color. The joining of acrylic and other materials like yarn, thread, and even chopsticks create amazing texture. But for Anthony Liggins, it's what the materials represent that tell the story. For example, the chopsticks symbolize life. Look closer, and quite often you'll see patterns of dots in his work. Anthony says the dots suggest spiritual and physical beings. And then those bright colors that he says represent the cultures of the world coming together.
I come from a small town in Virginia, and I had a dream and a goal and an aspiration to be an artist on the international stage. And I worked 10, 12-hour days for years to get to this platform and this stage where I have entrepreneurs and investors from other parts of the world saying, can we bring you to our country and you bring the same concept to our country?
I first met Anthony Liggins at his gallery in Miami, and it wasn't long before it was clear why this artist, who hails from Smithfield, Virginia, has work on display in some of the most highly regarded venues in the world, including the Smithsonian. He describes himself as a messenger and uses the silent language of his art to connect all who view it. But on this particular evening, he used his voice to speak directly to college students from Hampton Roads about pursuing their dreams.
There's lots of distraction, there's lots of moving parts, and there's so much coming at you on a day-to-day basis. So I always say follow your heart, follow your soul, and reveal yourself through the creative process. And you really have to believe in it more than anybody else.
Anthony Liggins' paintings can be found in 700 public and private collections around the world, and he shares some of those paintings in his book, Art is Love, A Spiritual Warrior's Journey, which chronicles his life from his early years as a high-end designer of women's shirts to his transition to artist.
I started taking my illustrations and started putting them on canvases, and the response was surprisingly in a positive light. And I was going through a stage in my life where I had, I went through a divorce, and then I was emotionally like, hey, what's next for me? And a lot of people was like, whoa, you're switching gears, you're going from fashion to be an artist? I mean, that's a bold move. I just continued mastering my craft, and it's been almost 20 years now. And we're domestically, between Palm Desert, California, Los Angeles, Atlanta, Miami, and we're in Seoul, Korea, Hong Kong, and Singapore. We're opening a new gallery in November in Hamburg, Germany. And this art, and like I think a lot of art does, it really changes people's lives, and I'm just a transporter of change through this particular medium and process.
For Another View, I'm Lisa Godley.
Not bad, coming from Smithfield, Virginia. That's fantastic. Want to give a shout out to the young ladies who are joining us here at Another View today. They are with the group READ, Rejuvenating Excellence and Accomplishing Dreams, and they came to watch us put together the program. So thank you guys for coming, and hello. We're really happy that you're here. Also want to remind you that we are going to be live next week on Friday the 23rd at Fort Monroe. We would love to have you in our studio audience. So please go to whro.org/events and sign up. Come out, watch us do radio live. You will enjoy it. Our guests are Dr. Cassandra Newby Alexander and Terry Brown, who is the superintendent of Fort Monroe National Park. And we want to thank you so much for spending an hour of your life with us. If you'd like to hear this show again or share it with a friend, please visit our website. It's anotherviewradio.org and download the podcast. And while you're there, please sign up for our eView newsletter. It's a once-a-week reminder of upcoming shows. We're on Facebook, so like us, and I'm on Twitter at Barbara Ham Lee. And since Chief Boone has already told us that they have many more followers than we do, let's show him by signing up for Another View on Facebook. Join us next week at Fort Monroe. Our theme music was composed and performed by Jay Sennett. Lisa Godley is our show producer. Todd Washburn is our audio engineer, and Bobby Fuller answered our phones. I'm Barbara Ham Lee. Thank you so very, very much for listening to Another View.